Welcome back to Moonstruck right here on Riot Radio. I'm your host Ryan, and today, of course, we're going to be returning with another concept in physics where we talk about neutron stars. I know in the recent weeks we've talked about black holes, wormholes, these kind of modalities of time travel. This week we're going to be talking about another supernova remnant, which is known as a neutron star, which is a place in the cosmos which has a very intensely strong gravitational pull, but also has a very strong electromagnetic pull. And this is kind of what we're going to be focusing in on today, because a lot of interesting effects actually take place near these phenomenon. If you're somebody who's kind of read up a bit on physics in terms of, various phenomenons, entanglement, tunneling, superposition, anything like that, any modalities that deal with like faster than light travel or anything in the quantum realm, you may be pretty interested in this because theoretically the energy that surrounds these points could be used for something like time travel or faster than light travel. So when we're talking about a body in space that has significantly strong gravity, we are also talking about something that has incredibly intense force to bend the fabric of space and time, right? So bend the fabric of reality around us as we know it. So maybe we'll start off a bit slow today. Maybe we'll just get the first picture up actually of, so this is what a neutron star looks like. And these exist in various places throughout the cosmos. If a star, when it's dying and it doesn't form a black hole, meaning it doesn't have enough mass accumulated to form a black hole from the core collapse, it will form a neutron star. And essentially what a neutron star is compared to a black hole is it's still a supernova remnant, but instead of everything being so intensely put under so much pressure that not the atoms could survive, nothing. The neutrons do survive, but the protons and electrons are all smashed together within the core, and essentially this leads to this remnant being created. And interesting compared to black holes that these are very luminous, essences in the cosmos. And this could essentially help us kind of understand maybe the deeper mechanics of, why some stars form after their death as a traditional star into neutron stars versus black holes. And I think maybe if we understand some of those concepts, we could kind of get into understanding things like how these electromagnetic fields operate. Neutron stars, in fact, for the most part, because when black holes actually do produce a magnetic field, it's not a direct magnetic field as a result of the black hole, but it's usually as a result of the accretion disk or the swirling matter that is in movement around the singularity. So that is traditionally what creates the magnetic field or the magnetic force, right? With a neutron star, that is intrinsically actually generated by the star itself. And the spin that the star, because the star is actually spinning, it spins at incredibly high speeds, and a lot of times if it reaches a certain speed, it's classified as either a pulsar or a magnetar. And essentially these are a type of neutron star which is specifically connected with certain aspects of, a neutron star, such as a pulsar is something that regularly has these beams of energy that are emitted, and hence the name pulsing, at a regular pace, and they emit a lot of types of radiation such as X-rays and gamma rays, and we can actually detect it here on Earth. So magnetars are very similar to this concept because they are also a type of neutron star. A magnetar it does emit pulses just like pulsars do, but they are mainly known for having a stronger magnetic field. So these are actually one of the strongest magnetic objects in the entire cosmos. So when we talk about objects like this, we're really talking about something that, in terms of, four fundamental forces we talk about in science: gravitational force, electromagnetic force, and the two nuclear forces. There are more of those forces at play in very high amounts here than we see in majority of the cosmos, and especially in our solar system or anything on Earth. So we're really dealing with almost primordial forces of the cosmos here at work. And I think one of the phenomenons that this is kind of overlapping with is the concept of black holes and what happens around black holes in terms of the radiation that's expelled from them, and kind of the various phenomenon that will occur around this object. So I know if you're a physics buff and you're watching this, you're probably more interested in what's going on with entanglement, superposition, and tunneling, seeing as those are fundamental aspects of how we look at things like, moving faster than light, or transmitting information, or quantum effects that could lead to some kind of transportation or teleportation effect, as well as time travel, right? I would say time travel is probably more intrinsically linked with the strong gravitational field, since we know that, if you circle around an object like a black hole or something with large gravity, you're actually traveling to the future. So, and again, this is, here, I'll maybe use the whiteboard here. We'll keep the picture up, but I'll just illustrate on the board. So, as Einstein talked about, E equals mc squared. Now, what the hell does this mean, right? Like, we're talking about E equals mc squared. If we see this as like a beam of light, and essentially what happens when you have space and time are dimensions that overlap with each other, but as you accumulate speed, which is essentially this conversion of energy into mass and mass into energy, and theoretically, the faster you move, the heavier you become, the more energy you produce. These dimensions get more and more compressed as you approach the speed of light, which is why interesting stuff happens, like time travel. So, in essence, though, these dimensions get more and more compressed against each other from this object that is moving at the speed of light. And when that happens, you are essentially tapping into the realm of time travel to the future, because you are moving faster, you're moving with more speed, you're changing the way that time flows, because speed is something that can overcome the flow of time, right? So, and this only happens early at near the speed of light, so you have to be moving with a significant amount of energy. In essence, though, the concept remains that if you are able to, or, if we were some kind of advanced civilization, or we had some way of harnessing an ability like this, and, I think for the most part, when we talk about these concepts on the show, you're empowered through the concept of philosophy, which expands your mind to thinking about these things, and therefore you become entangled with it. But anyway, I digress. Point is that if we were able to harness the essence of something like this, you would essentially have a modality to travel to the future and possibly even travel back in time, which, of course, as we talked about, leads to various paradoxes, so we don't actually know that that is possible. However, I will say, if we take a look at the picture up here, and we take a look at the two beams of energy being emitted from both poles of the star, they look very similar. Well, actually, I shouldn't say poles, but ends of the star. I don't know for a fact that the magnetic poles are actually at those 2 points. But point is that it looks very similar to, if you're interested in physics, a concept that is known as the Tipler cylinder. and this is a modality of time travel which actually theoretically would lead to backwards time travel. Of course, the big problem with this theory, as I think I mentioned in a previous episode, was that it has to be an infinite cylinder for you to create backwards time travel, which of course creating an infinite cylinder is as complex as creating a universe, which of course we cannot do. So I digress on the concept of time travel, or backwards time travel at least. The concept I guess we're looking at here is this star, this massive object in the cosmos, which has the potential to really bend and warp reality around it. So, in essence, when we talk about something like this, when we talk about a massive object that is influencing and bending all of reality around us as we know it, we are talking about a concept that changes our very understanding and perspective of the world. If there's one thing that is fundamental to our experience anywhere we go in the cosmos, even life after death, whatever, if you're watching the show and you only get like one thing out of this episode, maybe let this be it. That perspective is the thing we'll always be able to carry with us, and I mean objective perspective, not a subjective perspective, but the perspective of something happening. There's something in movement. There's something going on, and I think that is almost a phenomenon which we refer to as consciousness, right? That there is something moving. There's something around us, right? Like if I was sitting in this studio and there was no movement of anything around me, I wasn't talking, people weren't walking through the halls, Justin wasn't like doing his hair back there, then like we would not be able to see like movement, and like everything would be almost like as interesting as and engaging as an experience is looking at an inanimate picture, right? So, as they say, picture tells 1,000 words, but the mind does get bored, which is why things are in movement, right? So, point is that this is bending our perception around how we can experience those things, how we can experience that. So, just like with a black hole we talked about, as you approach the event horizon, things almost infinitely slow down to a point where they're almost imperceptible to the observer of, say Jimmy is falling into a black hole, and Bob is in his spaceship and he's looking at Jimmy falling into the black hole. Jimmy slows down almost infinitely as he approaches the event horizon and doesn't even pass over the event horizon. Jimmy doesn't experience that. He sails right over the event horizon and gets crushed. But point is that the perspectives are different because gravity is at play, and gravity is in a force that has the ability to warp the way we see reality, which is kind of why we're on Earth in the first place. And this is the only place where we can experience something in a subjective nature. I actually I was thinking actually about this concept recently, and I know we're maybe getting a little tiny bit distant from the concept of a neutron star, but it does have to do with gravity, so I will elaborate on it anyway. But essentially, the concept that, if there are higher dimensional beings out there, unlike us who, live in some higher dimensional plane, if you're somebody who's big into like religion or spirituality and you believe in angels, this is kind of a similar concept to that. Some kind of higher intelligent being that has a consciousness that works differently from ours. So, again, I'm no artist, so bear with me, guys. But point I'm trying to make is that if these things do exist, and they do have a conceptualization that revolves around this higher perspective, it might literally be a higher perspective, one which we cannot even visualize, which is why, when we pray to angels, they might be around us and we can't even see them. They might be invisible, intangible, able to move through the walls or whatever, teleport, because they're in this higher dimensional plane here at the top of this, like, spherical pyramid type object, right? So they're at this higher perspective. So this is our reality here. This circle down here, or this circle down here, this is our reality. This is where they exist. So this is where we exist. Here at the bottom of the two circles, here's where they exist. So even if you think of this whole circle here as Earth, and this as like where, you know, higher dimensional beings are on the flat space-time continuum, you know, up in space or whatever, we're in a bend in the space-time continuum. So we're in this little pool where, you know, we're swimming around like, I don't know, something would swim in water, and somebody looking down would be able to see it, and the thing swimming around would not be able to see the person looking at it. Similar to a concept like that. So when we take a look at this type of star and we imagine something similar to that, we're really talking about the same kind of concept here. We're talking about an ability to move things to a higher dimensional plane or through dimensional planes in which they might not even be observable to anything anymore, right? So yeah, I mean, essentially, you know, if you were able to tap into this ability, essentially have the powers of, like, I don't know, to make a like pop culture reference, if you'd be able to be like Danny Phantom, like, I'm going ghost, you know, and be able to just boom through the wall, right? So, or, you know, do any number of things, you know? So in essence, though, that's the conceptualization of how you might view this kind of dimensional shift, right? So, you know, and again, I guess I just explained angels there in, like, you know, 2 minutes. But in essence, though, if there are any higher dimensional beings out there, spirit, whatever you want to call it, they likely exist on that plane where we cannot see them, even though they can see us. But obviously their ability to interact with the physical is not the same as us, right? I could touch my hand to this table and the table will stop my hand from moving through it, right? You know, if, you know, you're in some kind of higher dimension or spiritual dimension, whatever, I try to touch the table, my hand goes right through the table, right? So interesting concept in any case. Perhaps we'll move to the next photo, and I'll elaborate a little more on the, I think that's the one, yeah, with the lines around it. So we can see the magnetic field lines here, and this is actually a great image to kind of elaborate on this concept of what I was going to talk about with entanglement, superposition, and tunneling, because what actually happens that causes these quantum effects, and right before I tell you, I'll give you a bit of suspense here as I drink some water. So in the essence of overcoming things like the speed of light, when we talk about these phenomenons, if you don't know what entanglement is, it's essentially, in a nutshell, it's the ability to manipulate interconnected particles over an infinite distance in the cosmos. So, you know, say there's a version of me on the opposite side of the cosmos right now, and he's also holding a marker, and we're both entangled, and I drop my marker. He will drop his marker at the exact same time on the opposite side of the cosmos, faster than the speed of light. So that's what entanglement is, and I think that is almost reflective of consciousness, because, you know, for example, when you imagine something in your mind, boom, it's there, right? You know, it doesn't take, there's no delay in it. If I say, you know, neutron star, and, you know, your mind goes to the picture of a neutron star, it's there instantly, right? In essence, though, concept really is that there is no delay, there's no time lag between two things. And, you know, for example, superposition, you have a particle on the opposite side of the universe, like we're talking about, where I'm holding the marker or whatever. Superposition can mean that, and this is a little bit more of a complex topic, but it means that essentially if I drop the marker here, I might be in a spot over on the opposite side of the universe where I simultaneously have dropped the marker and have not dropped the marker. So, or maybe actually it might be that if I'm about to drop the marker here, or am in some kind of state where I have dropped it and have not dropped it, the other me is also in that position. In any case, a lot of weird stuff happens here. That's why Einstein termed this as spooky action at a distance, because it very much is something we don't really understand too well. In essence, though, we're really talking about complex ideas that violate essentially the speed of light, the cosmic limiting factor, which we have been told by Einstein that essentially is, the speed limit of the cosmos. You cannot go faster than this, you cannot move information across the universe faster than this, except through this phenomenon. But this phenomenon is actually not something in movement, because it is happening instantaneously. So in essence, that is kind of the perspective on what is happening. When we talk about the concept now of including tunneling is your ability to essentially, let's say I was stuck in this room. Let's say the door was locked, I couldn't get out of this room. Theoretically, there's a version out there of me who, by placing his hand on the wall at a certain trajectory, at a certain angle, he could essentially phase right through that wall or pass through the wall without being, obviously bouncing off the wall or not able to pass through it or whatever. He could move right through that wall like a ghost. And physics tells us that that's possible. But again, it's a very slim probability. It's like, 1 in a million or maybe more chance that phenomenon will actually take place. But in essence, it can happen. So it's kind of like a cosmic glitch in the universe to a degree. Maybe not actually a glitch, but you get what I'm saying, that the basic concepts of physics are essentially overcome for a brief moment in time. In essence, though, when we get back to neutron stars, so what's happening is you can see the field lines around this object. What happens is that they break apart and they reconnect. And this phenomenon is called magnetic disconnection. If I was doing ASMR now, like I do on my other channel, I would say magnetic disconnection, magnetic disconnection, magnetic disconnection. And I'd whisper that. But in essence, though, magnetic disconnection is what occurs here. And the field lines break apart, and then they go through magnetic reconnection. And again, if I was on my other channel, also known as the Sword of Mercury, I would say magnetic reconnection, magnetic reconnection, magnetic reconnection. And magnetic reconnection is obviously when they recombined. And through this process, there's actually phenomenons that can happen, like tunneling, like superposition, like entanglement. And from these phenomenons that occur through these magnetic fields lines disconnecting and reconnecting, you essentially have this space of very intense energy that is released. And if you guys don't know this about what actually NASA says about the sun, apparently magnetic portals form between the sun and the earth every day. And essentially these magnetic portals tunnel through dimensions, and they're caused by the loops in the magnetic field. In essence, though, similar concept. The main factor being that, unknown energies from other places in the cosmos could be constantly bombarding the Earth, and we wouldn't even know it, even though NASA tells us that they exist. So, we have the ability actually to know that this is a phenomenon that's real. But again, like most people in the world are like, well, if it doesn't help us bring in monetization, who cares, right? But in essence, we should care about these things because, we can't take whatever we do here to the next world. The only thing we can take is our consciousness and our ability or will to learn and edify the mind, and all those intrinsic principalities that exist within inside of us and inside our soul. The fascination of the cosmos, the excitement for adventure, the childlike mentality of exploration. Those are things we take with us when, we move to wherever we're going in another dimension after this world. So in essence, that's what we carry with us. We don't carry I don't carry this whiteboard, I don't carry this mug, I don't carry, any of the dollars in the bank, I don't carry any of that, right? So not this phone, not Instagram, not TikTok Reels, blah blah blah, right? So it's not so much about you must understand this concept because physics, blah, blah, blah. It's more so that here's an interesting concept. What can we do if we explore it? What other possibilities does that open up in our mind to explore? Does it spark a fascination with something outside of ourselves which we can engage on an intrinsically and deep level? So that is really the thing that I make this show about. It's not so much about learning physics, it's about what we can learn from learning physics, if that makes any sense. Or what we can experience from learning physics, or any of the things that are part of that journey. I digress back to the field here. So when these field lines break apart, when they reconnect, when they go through magnetic disconnection, when they go through magnetic reconnection, when they go through this process of this field alternation, really, and through this mechanistic way of changing the energy in the environment, you have this process of which high amounts of energy that can be released at certain points. It's almost like setting off like a supernova in a very, very, very tight space, right? But again, magnetic force, something that's intrinsic to this whole planet. If the magnetic field around this planet fails, we're toast. So literally, the sun would vaporize us. So magnetic fields is something that's very intrinsic to the support of whatever system it's facilitating, right? If your magnetic field in your body fails, you're toast, right? So in essence, this is why this quality is so important to big objects like this, and I guess aspects of life in general. So right, magnetic disconnection, field lines breaking apart, magnetic reconnection, field lines coming back together. So magnetic disconnection and magnetic reconnection are really fundamental to all aspects of the cosmos, but we can see it in these certain places, and they're very much parallel to the concept of consciousness. So just keep that in mind next time, we're thinking about anything in physics, or thinking about, maybe how imagination works, or how stars work in terms of the energy they expel. Because stars are very much almost like what we term as cells in the blood, They're little forms in the cosmos, because the cosmos is infinitely big. There are these little parts in the cosmos that expel incredible amounts of energy, and actually we have quite a bit of electrical potential in our body, which most of us cannot even tap into, myself included. So I have known for a long time that our body has the ability to do some pretty out there stuff in terms of the energy that is around the body. But again, incorporating that into your experience in some meaningful way is that integration challenge. Point is though, if you were the electric man from Black Ops 2 and you could utilize that energy somehow, it doesn't mean that you automatically know what you're doing, right? The point is that the ability to do it is still there. So, but again, like all things, there is some kind of learning curve to that. In essence, though, this is really the focal point of kind of all things in the cosmos related to the concept of magnetism, right? Very few places actually in the cosmos which don't have this intrinsic quality of some kind of magnetic field. black holes kind of being the main I guess outlier in that, because again their magnetic field is not generated by the object itself, because the object itself is mainly just void. So in any case, going back to this, well, maybe we'll go to the next image and we'll talk a little bit about the variations here. So here we can see the magnetic field in action in space. And essentially this is like, if you look at this image and you're somebody who watches anime, bro, does that not look like aura to me? Like, I mean like this is essentially though what all human beings have around them, right? Or at least most of us have the ability to have this force generated around us in some capacity, if not all of us. There are some kind of variations with how it operates, whatnot, but essentially the concept is you have this magnetic wind around you, or this magnetic force, and this is what changes the whole perspective or reality around you, right? So if you think of gravity as one single point, like a black hole that sucks in everything, you think of a magnetic field as a point where maybe that one point loops out infinitely to create this almost toroidal kind of shape, right? Or field effect. So this is really the essence of the difference between gravity and magnetism, or electromagnetism, because as we know, they're linked. So, and at a higher level, magnetism and electromagnetism, or electromagnetism, becomes light. Oscillating electric and magnetic fields create light. That's what we see with our eyes, but again, we only see like 0.05% of that. Most of the universe is made out of dark energy and dark matter, which again, 75% of the universe, or 73%, is dark energy, 23% dark matter. So again, just to clarify, 73% of the energy in the cosmos is dark energy, 23% is dark matter. Invisible forces which we cannot see or touch, but this is what physics says that our universe is made up of now. And we, stars, and us, and all the natural elements, everything on the periodic table, everything that we can touch, 5% of the whole cosmos is what are elements that are actually familiar to us. So again, what is dark energy and dark matter? Invisible energy, which we can't see or touch, which is all around us, right? So sounds a lot like magic again. But here, we're seeing the essence of magic in action, really. We're seeing the magnetic field lines around an object powerful enough to shape the course of the whole environment around it, right? So this is really the basis of a neutron star. And we'll go to the next image, actually, and we'll look at this is essentially what a magnetar or pulsar is. So it's a neutron star that spins up to a high speed, and we'll actually talk about how these objects, even when they cool down after a while and they become dormant. If you've seen Endgame, actually, or maybe, no, this was Infinity War, but when Thor is getting Stormbreaker, the star is like, it's not lit anymore when he goes to Nidavellir, or however it's said. It basically, the whole place is powered by a neutron star, as they say in the film, and because the rings have stopped moving, the neutron star is like dormant. But essentially, this is the essence of what happens when this star kind of cools down or stops moving. That the essence of the star is still there, but because there's no movement, because the star is not spinning at a rapid pace, it doesn't emit energy like this version of a neutron star here. So this is basically a pulsar that emits these big beams of radiation and large amounts of energy. So to bring it back to life, a lot of times if there is a co-star or co-star. So, or there's some object nearby which the star could pull energy from. It could spin up again and come back to life, and that's kind of what we see Thor do in that film, right? He essentially is basically trying to get the rings back into movement so the star can spin up again and generate that heat, right? Because of course it is frozen over. So again, when these things spin up, they can become intensely hot, emit a lot of energy, emit a lot of radiation, create this type of force around it, which really has the ability to, as we said, warp the cosmic field and environment around it at a reality-changing level or reality-altering level. So, in essence, that is what happens when one of these stars slows down and almost, like, I guess you can say, comes close to dying. It can spin up again, right? So, again, like, as we've talked a lot about in the show, there's no such thing as life or death. There's just a process of change, really. So we can even see it from this, that even objects in the cosmos such as this, most powerful ones that come close to being dormant, can spin up again if enough energy is produced to it, right? So it can rekindle the flame almost, right? So in essence, that's what happens when one of these things comes close to cooling down or slowing down on their spin. But when they spin up, they can essentially emit a lot of these beams of radiation, X-rays and gamma rays. Again, we can detect that on Earth, and you would not want to be in the vicinity of one of these things as one of these pulses goes off, because they do emit quite a bit of energy in the field. So again, magnetars, pulsars, very similar. Magnetars mainly focused on magnetic strength. Pulsars mainly focused on ensuring that those regular beams are at a frequency interval, or they're occurring at some regular interval, or recurring in some kind of rhythm, right? So in essence, that's the concept of pulsars and magnetars, and they can also overlap. Some are termed as pulsar magnetars or magnetar pulsars, but they are all neutron stars, right? So that's the overarching concept here. So even when a star dies and the remnants create a neutron star, it is not fully out of life, really, because it has just gone through a process of change. So a black hole is really kind of the last stop on that train or on that journey. So a black hole is the very final remnant that one of these stars can become, and there's nothing after a black hole. I believe that in due time it does evaporate, but essentially that process will take so long that we will all be long dead, and the universe will be like trillions of years probably from now. It might be even so long that the universe itself is almost like disassembling. So essentially it would take almost an infinite time for black holes to evaporate. So black holes will be along for quite a while. In essence, though, that's kind of the life journey of a star there. That's kind of the life journey of a star. So, yeah, I think that is the majority of it. We covered quantum effects. We covered the magnetic field. We covered time travel. We covered kind of the visible spectrum of energy in our universe. Maybe we'll go to the last picture here and just kind of sum up. So here we can see again the magnetic field being radiated out the side and the energy shooting out. And actually, you know what, I do think these are at the poles, because typically at the poles the magnetic field lines do come really, really close together. So you can even think about the poles on a magnet. So it's really the same concept. I was thinking about actually on the ride here. which is maybe what will sum up this show, the end of this episode, with the concept of, is that, on this planet, we think of it as, just a place where we come to live and whatever, and, a place where we've cultivated society. But if the whole Earth was one cell, like a cell you'd see in our body or something like that, or, a sun rather, it's almost this environment that is built on trees and built on all the organisms that exist on this in this environment. And we're all essentially, if there was one basis off of why maybe all of us are on the planet, it should be to cultivate that environment or build it or innovate it in some way, right? But again, I mean this within not destroying the natural landscape, not tearing down trees for, innovative purposes of construction, not demolishing natural landscapes, not, destroying the land, whatever, not polluting the earth, not all of that garbage which, big business and capitalism and all those things that have come into playing a factor in, because all of that is man-made concepts, right? Trees have been around for a lot longer than us. They have a lot more wisdom than us, for example. There are other organisms like birds that have been around since the dinosaur period. They're obviously not looking the same way they used to. I mean, if you watch Eldon's show, he could tell you about that. He could tell you about birds and pterodactyls and whatnot. So, birds have been around for a long, long time. So, essentially, the concept is that all living organisms form this almost union with each other, and that is almost this force that goes beyond just communication through words or through anything that society has constructed. It's something intrinsic to this magnetic field which we see around us. So it's in the field, right? So that is kind of the essence of neutron stars, magnetars, and pulsars, this object which bends the fabric of reality and really illustrates to us all of these forces working in some kind of union with each other. So, in essence, maybe we'll sum up there. And we've talked about quite a bit. As I said, we talked about entanglement, time travel, magnetic fields, magnetic disconnection and reconnection. We've talked about the types of energy that is emitted from these things, X-ray and gamma rays. We've talked about higher dimensional beings here. So quite a bit actually packed into one episode. Maybe not all in just relating to neutron stars, but the concept is, again, as I said about this show, is not to focus just on physics. It's to use physics as a building block to something greater. So again, I encourage you to follow us on DC Media Hub if you aren't already. Follow me on Instagram at top_sorcerer. Check out my other channel, Sword of Mercury, which perhaps I'll start linking in the description, actually, where I actually do talk about this in a shorter format. This show is more for if you want to hear me ramble about science and physics. If you want to hear shorter format content, which is, in a nice soothing voice and relaxing tone that maybe something you'll listen to before you go to bed, just to cultivate imagination or complexity about, whatever is going on out there in the cosmos. Even things, from everything from exercise to time travel. Then I encourage you to check that out. Again, it's called Sword of Mercury. And yeah, I encourage you to like, subscribe, help support the channel, because it really does help. And I believe that is it for today's show. Again, this is Moonstruck right here on Riot Radio. Tell us in the comments if you enjoyed this show, and signing off.